An ex-soldier helped an elderly woman cross the street, unlocking a secret inheritance that neither could have anticipated on that gray November morning. The crosswalk signal blinked impatiently as Marcus Fletcher stood at the edge of Palmer Avenue, his worn military backpack slung over one shoulder. The weight of it nothing compared to the invisible burdens he carried. 3 years since his discharge, and still the sounds of the city, a car backfiring, a door slamming shut, could send his heart racing like artillery fire in the distance. Rain misted the air, settling on his face in a cool embrace. Marcus pulled his jacket collar higher, not from the cold, but from an instinct to shield himself from the world he no longer felt part of. That's when he saw her, an elderly woman with wispy silver hair, clutching a weathered leather handbag against her chest. She stood hesitantly at the curb, one foot hovering above the pavement as if testing waters too deep to brave alone. Something in her uncertainty resonated with him. Perhaps it was the way her hand trembled, not unlike his own did on the bad nights. Or maybe it was simply that helping her required no explanations, no small talk, no questions about what he'd seen or done overseas. Just a moment of simple human connection, something he'd been avoiding since coming home. "Ma'am." His voice came out rougher than intended, sandpaper against silk. She turned startled, eyes magnified behind thick lenses. "Would you like some help crossing?" Relief softened her face, creating a topography of wrinkles that spoke of years lived fully. "Oh, my dear, would you? These streets get faster every year, and I'm afraid I don't." Marcus offered his arm. Left arm, always the left, keeping his dominant side free, a habit he couldn't break, and felt her thin fingers curl around his elbow with surprising strength. The gesture stirred something forgotten within him, a memory of his grandmother's touch from childhood summers that seemed to belong to someone else's life now. "I'm Marcus," he said, surprised at offering even this small piece of himself. "Eleonora Whitfield," she replied, her voice carrying the crisp dignity of another era. "But my friends call me Nora." They stepped off the curb together, matching their pace to her careful steps. Halfway across, a taxi swerved too close, splashing dirty water toward them. Marcus pivoted instantly, shielding her with his body, his reaction automatic and fluid. The water spattered against his back instead of her pale blue coat. "My goodness," she breathed, looking up at him with startled recognition in her eyes. "You've done that before, haven't you?" "Protected people." The question hung between them, heavy as the clouds overhead. Marcus didn't answer, but something in Nora's gaze told him she didn't need him to. They reached the opposite curb in silence. "Thank you, young man," she said, still holding his arm even though they'd completed the crossing. Her eyes, pale blue and surprisingly sharp, studied his face with an intensity that made him want to look away. "Would you?" She hesitated, then straightened her shoulders with a determination that belied her fragile frame. "Would you humor an old woman and join me for tea? My apartment is just in that building there. The red door." Marcus should have said no. Should have nodded politely and continued to his apartment 3 blocks down, where empty rooms awaited with their familiar silence. Should have maintained the careful distance he kept from everyone since returning stateside. Instead, he heard himself say, "I'd like that, ma'am." Nora's apartment was like stepping into another time. Shelves lined with leather-bound books reached toward high ceilings. A gramophone, an actual gramophone, sat in one corner beside a wingback chair draped with a hand-crocheted afghan. The scent of lavender and old paper hung in the air, comforting in its unfamiliarity. "Sit, please." She gestured to a sofa upholstered in faded floral fabric. "The kettle won't take but a moment." Marcus perched on the edge of the cushion, his backpack still clutched in one hand. His eyes swept the room automatically. Exits, cover, potential weapons. Old habits. His gaze caught on a framed black and white photograph on an end table. A young man in military dress uniform, his posture parade ground perfect, eyes staring confidently into the future. "My Robert," Nora said, returning with a tea tray that rattled slightly in her grip. Marcus jumped up to help her, taking it gently from her hands. "Thank you, dear. Yes, that's my husband, Korea." She settled into the wingback chair with a soft sigh. "He came home, but part of him never did. I suspect you understand that better than most." Marcus froze, teacup halfway to its saucer. The porcelain was so delicate, he could see the shadow of his finger through it. "It's in your eyes," she continued softly. "The same look he had. Like you're always standing guard, even when there's nothing left to guard against." The cup clinked against the saucer too loudly in the quiet room. Outside, rain began to tap more insistently against the windows, a metronome counting seconds of uncomfortable silence. "Afghanistan," he finally said. the word feeling foreign on his tongue. 3 tours. Nora nodded, not with pity, but with understanding. She didn't press for more, didn't offer empty platitudes about service and sacrifice. Instead, she poured his tea and asked if he took sugar, as if he'd just mentioned the weather rather than the thing that had hollowed him out and filled the space with shadows. They talked, or rather, Nora talked, and Marcus listened, about inconsequential things: the changing neighborhood, her collection of first edition mysteries, the orchid struggling valiantly on her windowsill. Her voice washed over him, requiring nothing. For the first time in months, the constant tension in his shoulders began to ease. "I should be going," he said eventually, noticing the afternoon light fading outside the windows. "Thank you for the tea. Will you come again?" she asked, her directness catching him off guard. "Perhaps next week? I make a decent pot roast on Thursdays." Marcus should have made an excuse, should have protected this kind old woman from the darkness he carried. But the thought of another afternoon in this peaceful room, with its smell of books and lavender, and someone who didn't need him to be anything other than present, was too tempting to refuse. "Thursday," he agreed, surprising himself. "Can I bring anything?" "Just yourself, dear," Nora said, walking him to the door. "That will be quite enough." As Marcus stepped back into the drizzling rain, something shifted inside him. Imperceptible, like a key turning in a lock so slowly that the tumblers barely whispered against each other. He glanced back at the red door of Nora's building before continuing home, wondering what he'd just committed to. Thursday came, and Marcus found himself standing before Nora's door, a bottle of wine clutched awkwardly in one hand. He'd spent 20 minutes in the liquor store, staring at labels before asking the clerk for help. His first voluntary conversation with a stranger in longer than he could remember. Dinner became a weekly ritual. Nora cooked, Marcus washed dishes afterward, and between they shared quiet conversation that carefully skirted the edges of his military service and her life after Robert's death. Sometimes they just sat in companionable silence, Nora knitting while Marcus read one of her books. 3 weeks into this unexpected friendship, Marcus arrived to find Nora pale and shaky, trying to change a light bulb in her entryway. "I've got it," he said, taking the bulb from her trembling fingers. "Are you okay?" "Just a spell." She waved away his concern. "Happens sometimes when I stand too quickly. Nothing to fuss about." But during dinner, her hand trembled so badly that soup spilled from her spoon before reaching her mouth. Marcus pretended not to notice until she sighed and placed her spoon down. "I should be honest with you, Marcus," she said, dabbing her lips with a cloth napkin. "I'm not as well as I pretend to be. Heart trouble, nothing dramatic, just the machinery wearing down after 87 years of service." "Have you seen a doctor?" he asked, his soup forgotten. "Many," she smiled wryly. "They all tell me the same thing. Manage the symptoms, take the medication, and prepare for the inevitable. But enough about that. Tell me, have you given any more thought to the community college courses we discussed?" It was Nora who had first suggested he might use his GI Bill benefits, who had helped him navigate the intimidating enrollment website, who had listened patiently as he voiced his fears about returning to a classroom after so many years away. "I registered for 2 classes," he admitted. "History and English literature." "Wonderful." Her face brightened, the color returning to her cheeks. "When do they start?" "Next month. If I go through with it." "You will," she said with such certainty that he almost believed her. Their friendship deepened as winter settled over the city. Marcus found himself picking up groceries for Nora when the sidewalks grew icy, installing a handrail in her bathroom after she mentioned feeling unsteady, and finally, reluctantly, accepting a spare key to her apartment, just in case. The nightmares that had plagued him since his return began to space themselves further apart. Not gone, never gone, but less frequent, less vivid. He started his college classes, surprising himself by contributing to discussions, by returning to his apartment with his mind engaged with ideas rather than memories. One evening in February, Marcus arrived for their weekly dinner to find Nora's door unlocked, but no answer to his knock. Fear squeezed his chest as he pushed the door open, calling her name. He found her in the living room, unconscious in her chair, her knitting fallen to the floor in a tangle of soft blue yarn. The next hours passed in a blur of ambulances, emergency rooms, and fluorescent lights that made his head pound. When a doctor finally approached, his expression told Marcus everything before he spoke a word. "She's stabilized, but her heart is very weak," the doctor explained. "Has she appointed you as her healthcare proxy?" "Are you family?" "No, I'm—" Marcus faltered. What was he to Nora? Not family. Not even a longtime friend. I'm her neighbor. She doesn't have family that I know of. The doctor's face closed slightly. I see. Well, we'll need to locate her next of kin for medical decisions. You're welcome to sit with her until visiting hours end, but I'll stay. Marcus interrupted, the steel in his voice surprising them both. In Nora's room, machines beeped softly, monitoring each precious heartbeat. Marcus sat beside her, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. Her hand, when he finally gathered the courage to take it, felt impossibly fragile, bird bones beneath paper-thin skin. I'm here, Nora, he whispered, not knowing if she could hear, not knowing what else to offer. Her eyes fluttered open near midnight, finding him with unfocused confusion that gradually cleared. Marcus, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the machines. You stayed. Of course I stayed. The words caught in his throat. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Good boy. Her fingers tightened slightly around his. In my desk. The middle drawer. Blue folder. Important. Before he could ask what she meant, her eyes drifted closed again, and she slipped back into unconsciousness. A nurse appeared at his side, gently suggesting he go home, get some rest, return in the morning. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice, and pressed Nora's hand to his cheek before placing it carefully back on the white hospital blanket. Outside, the night air bit at his face. Marcus walked the 15 blocks home, letting the cold numb the fear and grief building inside him. At his apartment, he collapsed fully clothed onto his bed, exhaustion pulling him down into dreamless sleep. He woke disoriented, sunlight streaming through windows he'd forgotten to cover. For a moment, he couldn't remember why dread sat heavy in his stomach. Then it all came rushing back. Nora, the hospital, her whispered instructions. Marcus showered quickly and headed to Nora's apartment. The blue folder wasn't difficult to find. Right where she'd said, in the middle drawer of the antique desk in her living room. Inside was a document with an attorney's letterhead, along with an envelope with his name written in Nora's elegant, shaky handwriting. He opened the envelope first, unfolding several pages covered in her distinctive script. My dear Marcus, if you're reading this, I've either told you about it or I'm no longer able to tell you myself. I hope it's the former, but I suspect it may be the latter. I've never been one to leave important matters to chance. When we met that rainy day at the crosswalk, I knew immediately what kind of man you are. I recognized in you the same qualities my Robert had. Strength, honor, and a deep wound that needed healing. In these months of our friendship, I've watched you begin to find your way back to yourself, and it has been one of the great joys of my final years. What you don't know is that I've been searching for someone like you for a very long time. Not just any kind veteran, but someone with your particular combination of gentleness and courage. Someone who would help an old woman without expectation of reward. Someone who needed what I have to give as much as I needed to give it. The legal document enclosed will explain the technicalities, but I wanted to tell you myself. I am leaving you my home and the majority of my estate. Before you protest, and I know you will, please understand that I have no close family remaining. My Robert and I were never blessed with children, and my few distant relatives have lived their lives without any connection to me. More importantly, this inheritance comes with a purpose. Robert and I established a foundation in 1975 to help veterans struggling with what they then called shell shock and now call PTSD. The foundation has operated quietly all these years, but needs new leadership, new vision. The world has changed and the needs of veterans have changed with it. I am asking you, trusting you to take this on. Not alone, of course. The foundation has a board and staff who have managed it since Robert's passing. But it needs a guiding heart who truly understands. It needs you, Marcus. You once told me you didn't know what purpose civilian life could hold for you. Perhaps this could be an answer to that question. Whatever you decide, know that our friendship has been a gift to me. You helped an old woman do more than cross a street. You helped her complete a mission that began with a promise to her husband nearly 50 years ago. With love and faith in you. Nora. Marcus read the letter 3 times, his vision blurring with tears he hadn't allowed himself in years. The legal document confirmed everything. The apartment, a substantial investment portfolio, and directorship of the Robert Whitfield Foundation for Veteran Healing, with assets in the millions. His phone rang, cutting through his shock. The hospital. Nora had regained consciousness and was asking for him. He found her propped up slightly in bed, looking smaller than ever against the pillows but with clear eyes that brightened when he entered. You found it, she said, not a question. Marcus nodded, pulling a chair close to her bed. Nora, I can't possibly. You can, and you will. She interrupted with a flash of the steel that must have sustained her through her own trials. Unless you truly don't want to, that would be different. Her expression softened. But I don't think that's the case, is it? It wasn't. Even through his shock and grief, Marcus felt something stirring inside him. Possibility, purpose, a future he couldn't yet fully envision, but could sense waiting for him. Tell me about the foundation, he said finally. Tell me about Robert. Nora's face transformed, years falling away as she began to speak. Robert had returned from Korea changed, haunted. Like Marcus, he'd struggled to find his place in the world he'd fought to protect. Together, they had created a sanctuary for others like him. First a simple support group, then a retreat center, eventually growing into a foundation that offered everything from therapy to job training to wilderness programs. It was his life's work, she said, and mine after he was gone. But I'm tired, Marcus. It needs new energy, new ideas. She reached for his hand. It needs someone who understands both the darkness and the way back from it. I'm still finding my own way back, he admitted. Yes, Nora smiled. That's precisely why you're perfect for this. You'll never forget what it's like to be lost. The doctor returned, ending their conversation with a flurry of tests and medications. When Marcus left that evening, Nora was sleeping peacefully, her face relaxed in a way that both comforted and terrified him. Over the next weeks, Marcus divided his time between Nora's hospital room, his college classes, and marathon sessions with the Foundation's board members and staff. They welcomed him with a mixture of curiosity and caution that gradually warmed as they recognized his genuine commitment to understanding their work. Nora rallied, then faded, then rallied again, a pattern that the doctors warned wouldn't continue indefinitely. During her good days, she and Marcus talked for hours. She shared stories of Robert, of their life together, of the veterans they'd helped over decades. More importantly, she listened as Marcus finally began to speak about Afghanistan, about the friends he'd lost, about the guilt and nightmares and isolation that had nearly consumed him. You know, she said one afternoon, sunlight from the hospital window casting a golden glow across her bed. When Robert first came home, he wouldn't talk about Korea at all. Not one word for almost 2 years. Then one night he woke up screaming, and it all came pouring out. Everything he'd seen, done, lost. She adjusted her oxygen tube with practiced fingers. I just held him and listened. Sometimes that's all we can do for each other. Bear witness. Is that what helped him heal? Marcus asked. That was the beginning, Nora said thoughtfully. But what truly saved him was helping others who were suffering the same way. Each time he reached out, each time he listened to another veteran's story, it was like he recovered another piece of himself. Marcus thought about the Foundation's retreat center he'd visited the previous week. He'd been nervous, surrounded by strangers who shared his experiences. But by the end of the day, he'd felt a connection he'd been missing since leaving his unit. He'd even exchanged numbers with 2 of the veterans, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. I think I understand, he said slowly. It's like the wound doesn't completely close, but it stops bleeding, and eventually it becomes a scar you can live with. Nora's eyes shone with unshed tears. Yes, exactly that. Spring came, bringing warmth and light that Nora observed from her hospital window with wistful eyes. Despite the doctor's efforts, her condition continued to deteriorate. One rainy April morning, she took Marcus's hand with surprising strength. I need to go home, she said simply. Will you help me? Against medical advice, but with hospice support, Marcus brought Nora back to her apartment. To their apartment now, though he still couldn't think of it that way. He moved in temporarily, sleeping on the sofa to be near if she needed him during the night. They settled into a gentle routine. Marcus attended his classes in the morning, then worked from home on Foundation business in the afternoon while Nora napped. Evenings were for conversation, for shared meals when she felt strong enough, for reading aloud from her favorite books when she didn't. One perfect golden evening, with the windows open to let in the scent of blooming flowers from the park across the street, Nora asked Marcus to bring her a small wooden box from her bedroom dresser. I've been saving this, she said, opening the box with trembling fingers to reveal a military medal, the Silver Star. It was Robert's. He rarely spoke of how he earned it, saving his platoon from an ambush, the citation says. He never felt he deserved recognition for doing what anyone would have done in his place. She closed the box and pressed it into Marcus's hands. I want you to have it. Nora, I can't. You can, she insisted gently. Not because your service was like his, or because you need another medal, but because you need to remember that courage comes in many forms. What you're doing now, facing life, facing yourself, choosing to help others instead of hiding from your pain, that takes as much courage as anything you did in uniform. Maybe more. Marcus felt something shift and settle inside him, a piece of himself clicking back into place. He couldn't speak, but he nodded, clutching the box against his chest. Nora died peacefully 3 days later, with Marcus holding her hand as dawn broke over the city. Her last words to him were simply, "Keep going." The funeral was small but well attended. Foundation staff, veterans who had known Nora and Robert over the years, neighbors, and Marcus's classmates who had heard about the remarkable woman who had changed his life. Marcus stood alone by the grave after the others had gone, the spring breeze rustling the flowers piled on freshly turned earth. "I will," he whispered, answering her final instruction. "I promise." In the months that followed, Marcus threw himself into both his studies and the foundation work. He completed his first semester with surprising success and registered for summer classes. The apartment gradually transformed, still Nora's in its bones, but with touches of his presence. Books for his courses stacked on the coffee table, a newer television in one corner, framed photographs including one of him and Nora taken during her last week home. The foundation flourished under his careful guidance. He didn't make sweeping changes, respecting the structures Nora and Robert had built, but he did introduce new programs specifically for younger veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. He hired 2 more counselors with combat experience. He started a weekly support group that he himself attended, both as facilitator and participant. 1 year after Nora's death, Marcus stood at the same crosswalk where they had met. The spring rain misted around him, not unlike that November day that had changed everything. He watched the light change, remembering her halting steps, her dignity, her unexpected invitation. A young woman stood nearby, juggling an oversized backpack and a portfolio case, anxiety evident in the tight set of her shoulders. As the light changed, she stepped into the street just as a taxi swerved too close. Without thinking, Marcus moved forward, shielding her from the splash of dirty water with his body. "Oh!" she exclaimed, looking up at him with startled eyes. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." Marcus smiled, feeling the full circle of the moment. "Actually, I think I did." They crossed together, and at the curb he hesitated. The woman was gathering herself to move on, already murmuring another thank you, already turning away. "There's a good coffee shop on the corner there," he heard himself say. "If you have time." She paused, studying him with curious eyes. "You know, I could use a coffee." "I'm Emma. Marcus," he replied, offering his hand. As she took it, he felt that same imperceptible shift he'd experienced the first time he accepted Nora's invitation. A key turning, a door opening to possibilities he couldn't yet see. They walked together toward the cafe, the rain tapering off around them, sunlight beginning to break through the clouds. Marcus felt Nora's presence like a gentle hand on his shoulder, urging him forward into this next chapter, reminding him that healing wasn't an endpoint, but a continuing journey best traveled with others. The inheritance Nora had left him wasn't just the apartment or the foundation or even Robert's silver star. It was this: the courage to reach out, to connect, to begin again. To cross streets both literal and metaphorical, never knowing where they might lead, but trusting that each step mattered. It was, Marcus realized as he held the cafe door open for Emma, the most valuable inheritance anyone could receive, the chance to become whole again, and in doing so, to help others find their way to wholeness too. And in the golden afternoon light that followed the rain, that seemed like more than enough.